So welcome back to another edition of Digging Deeper. Pastor Bradley Martin here, and I am excited that you have joined us once again on our journey through the book of Joshua. Let me just remind you, if this is your first time or if you haven't joined us in a while, just let me remind you that any and all of these episodes that we go through are available on our social media platforms at One Church. You can look at them through YouTube or through Facebook, and you can share, and subscribe those. So if anytime you miss one or want to go back and listen to something that we've done in the past, let me encourage you to do so. But also let me encourage you, if you enjoy the podcast genre, if you would rather listen to me than look at me, which I certainly can see why, you can certainly do that. You can subscribe and like to those on your favorite podcasting streaming service, whether it's Spotify or Apple Play or whatever you tend to do that. But get the word out, share these things, so that we can pass some study to other people, and you can encourage them to do so. So we have been in the book of Joshua. We're in the book of the 7th chapter of the book of Joshua this week, and we're going to look at one of the first defeat since we have been going through the book of Joshua. Let me back up and just remind you where we've been. Joshua was the commander of the army, or the commander of really the nation at this point in time. He'd taken over from Moses. Moses was the great leader that led Israel out of Egypt, through the wilderness, through 40 years of wandering. And then we are crossing over we have crossed over the Jordan River into the Promised Land. This was the same land that the God promised to Abraham in Genesis 15. Was really the biggest time, first and biggest time, but reminded him and the nation throughout from there that this was a covenant that God had established with him and his people, that he had promised them. That's why we call it the Promised Land, the land of milk and honey, or Canaan, which was going to be the home of Israel. They were going to have to fight for it, but they were just going to have to follow God as well. And so we looked last week at the incredible victory that God gave Israel over the city of Jericho. Jericho was the oldest, it still is the oldest city. Most scholars, most archaeologists even consider it one of the most oldest cities in the world. Very powerful city at the time, which was surrounded by a wall. We went through last week and talked how God exactly told Israel to do that. For 6 days, they were to march around one time silently. On the 7th day, they were to do it 7 times, and on the 7th time, the trumpets would blow. They would shout, and then the walls, as the song would sing, came tumbling down, and they were given the victory over Jericho. So this is a nation. While it's a nation that's been around for, almost 500 years now. Really more than that, just 500 years since the captivity of Egypt. So it's a nation that is relatively young in its ability to fight for itself, but it is experiencing victory. And when people experience victory, they gain confidence, they gain kind of sometimes self-reliance. They believe that they can do it on their own. I think in the sporting realm, you have a lot of this where a coach comes in, and it may not be a very good team, but he coaches them up and he gives them the game plans, and they follow that coach's lead. And before you know it, they're experiencing success. But there's a certain pathway to that success. There's a process. We talk very often, both in the spiritual realm, but also the non-spiritual realm, especially when it comes to leadership, about process and processes. and about how important the details are. And of course, we talked about the attention to detail that God gave to Joshua, to the people, the specificity of the number of times that they would walk around the walls before they came tumbling down, the specificity, even going back, the specifics when it came to building the temple or constructing the tabernacle, which would later we would see as we moved to David and to Solomon, it became a temple. The specifics and the detail that he showed when he built the Ark of the Covenant and how that was to be handled, and we see throughout the Old Testament the problems that happen when you don't give attention to detail, when you try to do it on your own or you try to take the lazy way out. And one of the, if not the biggest command that God gave through Joshua to the people was, when I give you this land, he's promising them victory. When I give you this land, you are to destroy all of the relics, all of the things that can be destroyed. And we talked about that. We mentioned it last week, how they were to take and to destroy all of the idols and all of the things that were worshipped that could be burned. They were supposed to destroy all of those, and that was to take away every temptation, everything that they saw that was there. They were to do away with that. They were to really, the word is to consecrate themselves or to set themselves apart. That word appears a lot in the Old Testament. Consecrate, prepare, separate, come out from among, do all those things that makes you different than everybody else. And the things that would not burn, the precious metals, the gold, silver, bronze, and steel alloys, they were to be put into the treasuries. That's what was going to fund, that God was giving them to fund their nation. It was going to how they were going to live. And you even go back when we were looking at the Exodus, that God gave them all of these same things, that when they were sent away, literally the Egyptians sent them away, they gave them all of their money, all their possessions, so that they would go away. So they didn't leave empty-handed when they left from Egypt, and they were not going from this point on empty-handed. God was not saying that I was not going to provide for you. He was going to do that, and those were the specific guidelines that they were supposed to live in. There's freedom that they were given, but they were also given guidelines. It's just like in Genesis, when he created the heavens and the earth, and he gave Adam full dominion over everything in the garden. He just had the guidelines not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so when they partook of that, when Adam and Eve didn't listen and they thought they could do this on their own, they believed the lies, they did all this. The protection of their life was their exile, their banishment. It wasn't so much God's anger. It was, God is such a merciful God that he puts you away from his presence in order to save you. It's like, remember when Moses was leading them, was leading Israel out of or through the wilderness, God came to Moses and he said, I'm not going to lead you anymore because, and it's really, he did it for their own good. He said his anger is so much there. He's such a holy God that he can't, his anger and his righteousness would destroy them. So he didn't leave them alone. He sent an angel to lead them in the form of a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. But for his own mercy, his mercy showed the fact that he saved them. And so in this, it's not so much, because the very first verse is going to say, but. And anytime you start something with a but, it contradicts, and almost does totally away with everything that you do. You ever heard somebody say to you, I love you, but I if you say that, you're already quantifying the contradiction that you're about to give. Your love has limits. I love you, but if I say to Amia, my wife, if I say I love you, but I don't like the way you do this, that's not the right way to say that, because really it is confining my love to whatever you are not doing that I don't like. I love you, and I'm going to tell you this for your own good. I love you. I need you to change this. I tell my children as they get older, their mistakes get more and more costly. It's like being an adult. Your mistakes get more and more costly. When you're a child, your mistakes can be overlooked more easily because they don't cost. But as you get to an adult, those same bad choices that you make cost more and more. And so we have this, we ended chapter 6 in verse 27. It says, so the Lord was with Joshua and his fame was in all the land. Remember that these chapters and verses were not there. There's no numbers when it was originally written. There's no chapters, there's no verse numbers, and so it would have just been one long story. So when you read it this way, so the Lord was with Joshua and his fame was in all the land, but the people of Israel broke faith in regard to the devoted things, for Achan, the son of Carmi, son of Zabdi, son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah, took some of the devoted things, and the anger of the Lord burned against the people of Israel. So we have this great momentous victory that Joshua led the people, and it's really one of the most historical victories really in all of humanity, all of human warfare. This little nation that was in bondage 400 some odd years earlier to the greatest power, overtook the greatest power through their God, through the power of their God, wandered for 40 years in the desert till all those people died off, and then they come across really a powerful nation, powerful city of Jericho, and you have this great momentous victory about that. And then it starts next with, but the people of Israel broke faith. And they riled up the anger against the Lord. Remember that God's anger is not like our anger. So when I get mad at something, when something happens to me, when a student or one of my children do something to me, I am offended because of what they did to me. God is offended because of what his people do to break the covenant that he has with them. It's a disappointment on steroids. It's when I'm upset with my children, I'm disappointed. When one of my children at school, when one of my students gets in trouble, I'm not angry the same way as I am more disappointed. And God's anger burned against the people. So he was angry of the sin that they had committed. They broke the covenant. They broke the rules. They broke the guidelines. But then you have in verse 2, Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven, east of Bethel, and said to them, go up and spy out the land. And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said, do not have all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and attack Ai. Do not make the whole people toil up there, for they are few. So about 3,000 men went up. Well, let me stop there for a second. Note the difference in how this went on. Okay, so we're back in the wilderness. We read this last week in the book of Numbers, where Moses sent out the spies to this very land. Remember, this is this very land. This is 40 years later. So they were in the wilderness for 40 years. Go back 40 years. We're back to where the original spies were sent out by Moses. Moses sends out the spies, sends out 12. 10 came back with a unfavorable report. They were scared. They saw the mountains instead of seeing the victory. They saw the obstacles instead of seeing the sovereignty of God. And so these 10 spies came back and riled up the people, so much the fact that they were ready to stone Moses and Aaron, and they wanted to go back to Egypt from whence they came, saying, at least we had graves there to die in. At least those were places that we could live and die. You brought us out here in the wilderness. We're so scared. Let's stone this Moses and Aaron, and let's choose somebody else. That was 40 years before that. So then go up 40 years minus a few days before this event. Joshua, who was one of the original 10 spies, or who was one of the original 12 spies, him and Caleb. So Joshua now is in leadership, and Joshua sends out spies to this very land. They sent them out to Jericho, and they got inside the city, and they came. This is a story where they came upon Rahab, the prostitute, the harlot, and they were told that the city is shaken, the city is scared to death because they've heard what exactly God has done for you. We know that we're in trouble. Everybody knows we're in trouble. They're going to try to defend it, but they know their hearts have melted. And so those spies went back and told him exactly what had happened. So the people's energy was up. Their confidence was up. So they believed this. So they go in to battle, and they believe this. And so they follow God's command. Again, we looked at that in chapter 6 last week. But now you have, again, Joshua is sending out spies, this time to Ai. Now, Ai is obviously a smaller city than Jericho. Ai is in a situation now where there's only a few thousand men instead of the great number of men that they thought that they would need or that they needed for Jericho. And so these men come back and say, you know what, we don't need as much. This is already ours. Just send up a couple thousand, 2,000 or 3,000 people to attack. Don't worry about making the whole people go up there and work. It's not going to take that. We got this. Now, what they didn't know is that there was a problem. They didn't know that God's anger was riled up against them. Reminds me a lot of Samson. Samson comes a little bit later in the Bible. The next book of the Bible is the book of Judges. Samson was one of the judges, and he was one of the protectors. He had powers that no one else on the earth had. He had strength. And yes, his strength was from the fact that his hair wasn't cut, but it was more than that. It was that relationship that he had with God. It was the Spirit of God that was inside of him because of the covenant that his parents and him had kept throughout his whole entire life. And you no doubt have heard the story that Delilah was trying to trick him into telling her so she could tell the Philistines what his strength was. And he was tempted several times. He played the game, And so finally he tells Delilah that it was his hair that was the source of his strength. And really, it wasn't his hair. The source of his strength was the Spirit of God that was in him. The hair was just a sign. And so when she cut off his hair, which broke the covenant, it turns into that God left, the Spirit of God left him. His strength left him. And so he went in to, when the Philistines came in, he assumed that everything was going to be the same as it was, because that's the way it always had been. He had become really his own worst enemy because of that. And when he tried to attack or defend himself against the Philistines, they came and they were victorious over him. So now you have the same kind of thing going on with Israel hundreds of years earlier than that. So they just assume everything now, because we won one battle, that we are going to win the next one. They didn't know that the whole nation was in trouble because of the sin of one man. So Achan was one of the men, and he had taken some of the things that he wasn't supposed to. Remember, we just talked about that God said, destroy all these idolatrous things, destroy everything that can be burned, and then the rest of it belongs to God. It belongs to the treasury. It wasn't to be kept by any individual. Now, it would not have been out of sorts in other nations for when somebody attacks somebody and wins the battle, that they are able to loot. They are able to take whatever. Those are the spoils of victory. But in this case, all those spoils of victory were to go to God. Those belong to God. So, about 3,000 men, this is verse 4, went up there from the people, and they fled before the men of Ai. Went up there from the people, and they fled before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai killed about 36 of their men and chased them before the gates as far as Shebarim, and struck them at the descent. So we have a major defeat. These people had experienced great victory, and now they were defeated. And immediately it says, and the hearts of the people melted and became as water. So they have gone from really being cocky and being full of themselves and being ready to go win any battle, because and really and truly they won one battle. Now, they saw the waters part, and I'm not minimizing the enormity of the victory, because it was huge. It was momentous. But they had put all their faith in that one thing. And because of the fact that God was angry with them and took his victory away from them for this one thing, their hearts immediately melted. And they became as water. So they weren't even able to stand up on their own. Their confidence was now totally gone. They probably felt the way that they did in Egypt. Now, this same generation was not in Egypt, but that same burdensome, where you are enslaved, where your will is taken away, your will to fight is taken away. This is how they were feeling. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth before the ark of the Lord until the evening, he and the elders of Israel. And they put dust on their heads, and Joshua said, Alas, O Lord God, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all, to give us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us? Would that have been content to dwell beyond the Jordan? O Lord, what can I say when Israel has turned their back before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and will surround us and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? So Joshua is having a little bit of a pity party here. Joshua, again, doesn't know that there's a problem. He just sees the defeat. He just sees that they've done all this stuff. God, why have you brought us this far to let us down right now? Why have you brought us out of Egypt? Why have you brought us across the Jordan? If you're going to do this, God, why didn't you leave us on the other side of the Jordan? Why did you bring us over here so these Amorites can destroy us, and then all the other people that we have already kicked their behinds, they will hear this and they will surround us and cut us off? Why, God? You ever been in that position where you just say, why have you brought me this far to let me down? Why have you allowed me to get this position or this place to only let it crumble? The Lord said to Joshua, this is verse 10, get up. Why have you fallen on your face? So he's having a pity party before God, and God says, get up. Because what they were doing was what they were supposed to be doing was trying to figure out what's wrong. So when you pray to God for the problem to come up so you can fix it, not for God necessarily to fix the problem. Because most of the time the problem is us. And we're responsible for fixing us. Israel has sinned. They have transgressed my covenant that I commanded them. They have taken some of the devoted things, and they have stolen and lied and put them amongst their own belongings. Therefore, the people of Israel cannot stand before their enemies. They turn their backs before their enemies because they have just become devoted for destruction. They have turned from eyes on God to looking at those things, to looking at those devoted things, those idols. It only takes one look. It only takes a second look to go back and see that. Because remember, 10 Commandments, remember the first 4 where we're supposed to have this relationship where God is the only God, and we are to put him above all others. That's that God. And we are to do that. They turn their backs before their enemies because they have become devoted for destruction. I will be with you no more unless you destroy the devoted things from among you. Get up, consecrate the people, and say, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow. For thus says the Lord God of Israel, there are devoted things in your midst, O Israel, you cannot stand before your enemies until you take away the devoted things from among you. In the morning, therefore, you shall be brought near your tribes, and the tribe that the Lord takes by the lot shall come near the clans. And the clan that the Lord shall take shall come near by households. And the household that the Lord takes shall come near man by man. And he who is taken with the devoted things shall be burned with fire, and all that he has, because he transgressed the covenant of the Lord, and because he has done an outrageous thing in Israel. So here you have God telling Joshua that here's the problem. I gave you these instructions. I told you exactly how the people were to act. They were supposed to do away with all the idols. They were supposed to do away with all the devoted things so that their eyes would be on me. And yet there's people that have done this. Interestingly so, he doesn't tell him specifically yet who has done this. It just referred to the people. And I think that the thing is, why that is because sin can affect those around you. And in this case, not everybody in Israel had done this. Specifically, it was Achan. Achan was the one who took the devoted things. Achan was the one that stole. But it was the entire nation that had been impacted. They were at a point where God's anger was burning against them, and bad things were happening. Verse 16, so Joshua rose early in the morning and brought Israel near tribe by tribe, and the tribe of Judah was taken. And he brought near the clans of Judah, and the clans of the Zerites were taken. And he brought near the clan of the Zerites man by man, and Zabdi was taken, and he brought near his household man by man, and Achan, the son of Carmi, son of Zabdi, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was taken. And Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord God of Israel, and give praise to him. And tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me. And Achan answered Joshua, Truly I have sinned against the Lord God, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful cloak from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, then I coveted them and took them. And see, they are hidden in the earth inside my tent with the silver underneath. So if you can picture this scene here, everybody in Israel was brought tribe by tribe. So we're talking thousands, if not close to 1 million people were brought. And so they narrowed it down one by one. They narrowed it to the tribe of Judah. Then they narrowed it to a clan, and then they narrowed it down again to another clan until it got down to a family, and then it got down to one person. And so you can just imagine the scene that was going on here, and how Achan, I'm sure, thought that he had gotten away with this because he hid it in the ground. And the crazy thing is what was he going to do with it? If it had to be hidden, what was the value of it? It's like when somebody goes and robs a bank and they have to hide, and they can't spend the money. What's the value of it? What's the value when somebody cheats on a spouse and they can't enjoy either relationship now because everything is broken? You see, there is no good outcome that comes with sin. There's always a consequence of sin. So Achan had taken this cloak. He had taken silver and a bar of gold, and he says, I coveted them. I desired them above you, God. But he had to bury them. I don't miss that point, that he had to bury them in the sand and hide them. He couldn't even... There is no value in it. If somehow or another I have all the money in the world and I write you a check for $1 million, and you go and frame that check and you put it up on your wall, but you never go cash it, you don't have $1 million. You have a check. You have a piece of paper, and I can't do anything with it. Like I said, if somebody goes and steals money or whatever possession you want to look at, but he can't use it, he can't enjoy it, he can't spend it, he can't buy anything, he can't put it in the bank, he can't even say he has it for fear that somebody will find out that he has it. And that's where sin takes us. Sin takes us down a road where we can't even enjoy what we have because of sin. And really, it breaks fellowship with everybody. So if somebody has an extramarital affair, let's just use that, they can't even enjoy the relationship they're having with the person because there's so much of a break in fellowship, and there's so much guilt, and there's so much, and they surely can't enjoy the fellowship they have with their spouse. So that's where sin takes you. And so Achan here has said, okay, I've done this. And I don't know if Achan thought that by confessing that he was going to be alleviated from that judgment. But Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to his tent, and behold, it was hidden under the tent, and the silver underneath. And they took it out of the tent and brought them to Joshua and to all the people of Israel. And they laid them down before the Lord, and Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, and the silver and the cloak and the bar of the gold, and his sons and daughters and his oxen, and his daughters and his oxen and his donkeys and his sheep, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, why did you bring trouble on us? The Lord brings trouble on you today. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and they burned them with fire. And they raised a great heap of stones that remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his burning anger. Therefore, the name of the place of that, therefore to this day, the name of the place is called the Valley of Achor. So notice here that his sin didn't just impact him. His sin impacted the nation. the nation experienced great defeat, but it also impacted his family. So they took his family, stoned every one of them, his sons and daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, and sheep, and everything that belonged to him, and stoned them, and they burned everything that they owned. So whatever Achan had ever done, we'll never know. He's forever tarnished as the guy that brought the defeat in Ai. That's where sin takes you. What I wanted to end this chapter with, because this chapter was preached the night that I felt called to ministry. And so I wanted to share a little bit, and that's been it's been 28 years ago, close to 30 years ago. Actually, it has been 30 years ago that this happened. So the details are a little fuzzy, but I do remember exactly the sermon. And the preacher preached on their sin in the camp, and that's not a very original title, because I think many people have preached that sermon title to this land, and how it impacts, how your sin, how one person's sin can impact the whole camp. So how can one person and their sin impact? And I don't remember being ever nudged to call to vocational ministry. I didn't know what that means, but I knew in that moment in time that God was telling me that my relationship with Him was impacting the relationship that everybody else around me, everybody in my family, their relationship was not going to grow. My church's relationship was not going to grow until I surrendered totally and made my relationship with God right. And so that night, I knew that God was calling me into serving Him, into the ministry, not knowing what that meant, of course, because I'd never seen that or experienced that. And I walked that out by faith for the last 30 years, really trusting Him at every step, because I don't know. I don't know what that means. I just knew in that moment that there was a break in my fellowship, in my relationship with Him. And the only way that the only way that I knew how to fix that was to totally surrender. So as we wind this chapter down, just let me remind you that your sin can impact those around you. Now, let me caution you, because we are very quick to blame God for things happening. We are quick to say, well, this happened because God. Now, God is all powerful. God is omniscient. God is all that. He's all that, omni everything. But God uses things as He used here. He used defeat in order to bring Israel back to where He wanted them, into a right relationship with Him. God used, even hundreds of years later when He exiled them, He never forgot them. There's always a remnant. There's always one, two left. His relationship is that His desire is that we all come and have a relationship with Him. And sometimes He has to take us through difficult times in order for us to get there. Sometimes those around us have difficult times. I can remember when we went through really 2 miscarriages with 3 kids, 3 babies. One was a set of twins. And I can remember how much pain that Amia was really going through, how much difficulty she has. And I felt responsible for that because I wasn't where God wanted me to be. Now, did I cause her miscarriages? No, I did not. I did not have that ability. I didn't do anything to her that would cause that. God, in His infinite wisdom and His knowledge that we don't have and we can guess, I think God was trying to bring us both. I think he was really working on me because I had began to settle for less than what He had called me to be. And He opened my eyes to some things and kind of refreshed me and renewed me into my calling. But but he did that to her as well, and we became stronger on this side of it. But I want to also just remind you that your actions do impact more than just you. So you're going to go through life and you're going to have God's going to call you to do things, and you're going to run away from him, and your decisions will impact you, will impact them. You can read the story of Jonah, how his disobedience about going to Nineveh, and he went to Tarshish instead. The people on the boat were going through a storm because of him. Now, it doesn't mean that that's always the case, and sometimes, again, we blame circumstances and blame God for the things because of somebody else's whatever. But it's just a reminder of the importance of us, how to fix us. We can't control others. Really and truly, Joshua couldn't control Achan. Now, ultimately, God took care of him, and God, they stoned him. But we can only control us. You control you, and you fix your relationship with God. And then the relationships of others, that's up to them and God. But you make sure your relationship with God is where it needs to be. Understand the impact that relationship or that lack of relationship has on everybody else around you, and work together to become stronger, to become more and more like him. God, thank you for Joshua chapter 7 as we have read. I pray that it is a reminder to us the importance that we have in our relationship with you and how that impacts others. May you guide and direct us in all things, and we give you the honor and glory for it all. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.